to be able to come on this medium with you today on my YouTube channel, Bob Dickerson. You can check me out. I don't know how many of you are doing YouTube and Facebook and doing Facebook Live. I'm hooked on this stuff now. I tell you the truth, I'm hooked on it. You know, I've only been doing it for just a few months now, but I'm really hooked on it. And I just want to talk to you because I think I have some information that I want to share. I've gained some knowledge and some information over my 40 plus years in banking and in business. And I just feel led to share that with you and to share as much as I possibly can with those of you who are interested in starting, growing, successful businesses. And I want to underscore that word successful, because if you start a business and you succeed, then that business contributes to you, your family, but it also contributes to me and my family and to society as a whole. You pay taxes and you employ people, and then you create character. You give communities those characteristics that are really important. And so what we want to talk to you about for just a few moments this evening, and I won't hold you long, I know it's dinner time. You can get more of this when we put it up on the website as a free gift. I had my website up there. Here it is again in case. It's bobdickerson.com, bobdickerson.com. So make a note of that. And we are going to put more of this up on the website at some point. But I wanted to come to you just a few minutes to talk to you to help you assess your readiness for business ownership. In other words, you know, I want you to be able to figure out where and what is your entrepreneurial DNA. Do you have what it takes? Now, I will be first to admit that entrepreneurs come in all shapes, sizes, colors, and from all situations in life, and that is very important. Successful entrepreneurs sometimes come from people who went into business out of necessity. Successful entrepreneurs sometimes come from people who went into business because they had a really important skill and they needed and wanted to share it. Successful entrepreneurs sometimes come from people who just have an enormous amount of expertise in an area, and to go work for someone, they'd be cheating themselves. So they choose the avenue of self-employment instead. Now, rarely, in my estimation and in my experience, do successful entrepreneurs come from folks who can't keep a job. Rarely, in my experience, do successful entrepreneurs come from folks who say, well, I just need to be my own boss because I don't really want to have a boss. Go into business and you have perhaps hundreds of bosses, and those are your customers. So it's very important for you to be able to assess your readiness for business ownership by figuring out what are my entrepreneurial skills and abilities. That is very important. So one of the first things that I want to encourage you to think about as a potential entrepreneur or a new entrepreneur or even an existing entrepreneur, I want you to understand that successful entrepreneurs take themselves and what they do seriously. Now, you'll find me, I love to joke and play and kid around and all of that, and that has nothing to do with it. But folks who are successful, especially people who are successful in business, take themselves seriously. Not only do they take themselves seriously, they take what they do seriously. When it's playtime, it's playtime. But when it's time to get to work, they get to work. They make sure that the work is done before the day ends. You know, whether that day starts at 7 in the morning and ends at 9 at night, or whether it started at 5 in the morning and ends at 10 at night, they take themselves so seriously that they're not going to leave tasks on the table. They're not going to potentially carry over today's task to tomorrow, because tomorrow has its own set of tasks. And so serious entrepreneurs, while they may laugh and they may joke and they may play, they take themselves and they take what they do seriously. And you can tell because they can cut you off. You know, they can laugh and joke and play and kid around, and all of a sudden you're cut off and we're back serious. We're back at it. that is one of the traits. And if you have that trait, then that's good. That means that you have a trait that, in Bob Dickerson's opinion, will make you a successful entrepreneur. The other thing that I've seen successful entrepreneurs do that I think is very important is they invest in themselves. Now, they start off with knowledge. They build that knowledge to superior knowledge, and then they continue to invest so that they build the knowledge. They continue to build. You got to understand that in order to build a better mousetrap, then you have to keep making it better. Because when you make your mousetrap, somebody else is going to come along and improve on it. And then somebody else is going to come along and improve on that. And if you don't come along and improve it again, then you're going to be left behind. So in entrepreneurship, there is this continuum of improvement. There's a continuum of gaining knowledge. There's knowledge added to knowledge. There's knowledge added to experience. There's knowledge added to everything that you do. And so that knowledge, investing in yourself, is the way you gain knowledge. You're going to seminars, you're going to workshops, you're reading books, you're finding out the best and newest ways of doing things. And then when you do that, guess what? You do it again. You gain more knowledge, you read some more books, you find out the next newest and best way of doing things. Understand that business is continuing, and you want it to go this way. You don't ever want it to go that way, because if you're level, you're going backwards. If you're standing still, you're failing, you're dying. And so that investing in themselves means that entrepreneurs are constantly learning. And when I look at folks that I've seen succeed, they were always learning. They were always in front of something that would teach them, in front of someone that would teach them, seeking out information from somebody that would teach them. And so gaining that knowledge is something that is vitally and critically important. Successful entrepreneurs, just by their very nature, are not afraid of risk. You know, the word entrepreneur defined is risk taker. It's someone who takes a risk in order to start a business, or in order to improve a business, in order to be in or be a business. But the very nature of entrepreneurship is risky. And whether we like that or not, whether or not we are in a position to take risk, we have to understand that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, risk comes along with it. There's no way around it. There's no ifs, no ands, no buts. There's no way around it. You are risking stuff when you decide to go into business. Now let's talk about what you risk. Well, obviously you risk money. Anybody who goes into business, one of the things they do is they leverage what they have. Here's an example. If you go to a bank and you borrow money and you don't pay it back, well, the bank is going to come after collateral. They may come after your house. They may come after your other assets. They may come after the money you have in the bank if you have some. And if you don't have any of that, then they will take you to court. They'll sue you. They'll get a judgment. That judgment attaches to any property you have. And guess what you can't do? You can't die your way out of debt. And so you got to understand that there are risks that come along with it. You risk losing time with your family, time with your loved ones, time with your hobbies, time with all the things you want to do. Those are things that you put at risk. And I think even more importantly, you put your reputation at risk. Because whenever you do something that doesn't work, there's always a little bit of reputational fallout. And although I don't think that it's always fair to judge a risk taker on the fact that they didn't succeed at that particular endeavor, on that particular journey, there is a risk involved. And so it's really important to understand that. But entrepreneurs, and if you're assessing your entrepreneurial DNA, then you've already come to the conclusion that you're willing to experience failure. I'm pausing there, and I want to make sure that sinks in. You are willing to experience failure. you're willing to have it not work and then not get down on yourself. You know, the old adage is, it's not how many times you get knocked down, but it's how many times you get back up. And so folks with that entrepreneurial DNA, they understand the risk. They're willing to experience failure. And if they get knocked down, then they understand that they've got to get back up. You know, a lot of the more modern books on succeeding as a business owner kind of start off with one of the things that sometimes we really don't think about. We don't think about who's in our network. We don't think about how we use our network to propel ourselves in business. Successful business owners network. They network, they network, they network, and they make sure that they understand who to network with. Now, so who do you network with? Well, other business owners, that's smart. People who help businesses, that's smart. People who potentially are your customers, that's smart. Even people who might be your competitors, that's smart too. Folks who might sell you something, or folks that might buy something from you, all of these people ought to be part of your network. Networking is a strategy. Networking is you adding strategically to the people you know, but even more than that, you're adding strategically to the people who know you. So it's very important that you develop and expand your network, but it's extremely important also that you cultivate your network. And you can think about cultivating a network like you cultivate a garden. Not only is networking important to you, but it's important that you feed into your network, that you fertilize your network, that you sprinkle something inside your network that helps your network grow. That makes you important. And that is one of the keys to success in owning a small business. Now, small business owners, those who are really good at it and those who have succeeded, also, they know the value they bring. They know when something is valuable, even sometimes when other people don't see it. Even when other folks don't really realize that there's value in this method, there's value in this product, there's value in this service. Successful entrepreneurs know how to do that. They have a knack for being able to convey that. In other words, they're really good salesmen. Keep in mind when you're selling all the time. You're selling when you're talking. You're selling when you're convincing someone to come to work for you. You're selling, obviously, when you're convincing someone to be your customer. But you're also selling when you're convincing someone to be a vendor of yours, to be a supporter, to be a banker, to be an ally. And so successful business owners know how to sell. Selling always starts, and every sales book is going to tell you this. Selling starts with selling yourself. I'll repeat that. Selling starts with selling yourself. So if you're a good salesman or saleswoman, and man, that's not gender specific. Salesman is any gender. If you're a good salesman, I don't want to get in trouble. If you're a good salesman, then you've adapted a knack for having the kind of confidence and the knowledge and the skills and the savvy to sell. I used to do this seminar a lot, and I would talk about the characteristics of successful businesses, and I'd list knowledge and superior knowledge, number one. I'd list persistence, and I may come back to that as number two. I'd list vision somewhere, in that list, and I'd list perseverance, and we'll come back to that one too. But somewhere in there, usually toward the end, I use that word savvy. And savvy is one of those words that is really kind of hard to define. I hadn't looked up the definition. You can look it up. So it's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. And so successful business owners have that savvy, that knack, the understanding, and maybe the propensity to be in the right deal at the right time, in the right place at the right time, with the right people at the right time. Savvy, it's very important. So along with all those other things, the knowledge, the persistence, the vision, the courage and all of that stuff, all of those things are important. But that little bit of savvy, savoir faire, that little bit of just knowing how to walk in a room and who to talk to and how to backslap and shake hands and what deal to cut, what deal not to cut, all of those things are very important. Now, a lot of folks talk about the P words. I used one, perseverance, persistence. I use that other one. And those things are very important because in a business, you are more than likely having to overcome something, especially in a small business, especially in a new business. There are always going to be obstacles to overcome. So people who lack persistence, and perseverance sometimes lack the ability to succeed. And then we talk about passion a lot. Passion is very important because passion is what drives you. Passion is what allows you to do what you do when it's not going well, to stay with it, when you just, had a couple of bad months or a couple of bad years, to stay with it through a COVID-19 crisis, to stay with it through the shutdown of business, to stay with it through the bank saying no. All of those things can be driven and overcome by your passion for what you do. As a matter of fact, I think passion is very important. I usually tell business owners that do what you do for free. If you love this so much and you're so good at it and you're passionate about it that you'd want to do it even if money was not an object, then that would be good. Most business owners do not get rich or fabulously wealthy running their businesses, but they do have a sense of pride and independence, and they're able to feed their passion for what they do. But that's very important. But here's another P word that I think it is never overlooked, but it may not gain the status that it ought to have, and that P is for planning. Planning. Failing to plan is planning to fail, and we've all heard that said over and over again. Planning in business is so very important. Now, we talk about business plans, and usually when we talk about business plans, people assume that we're starting a business and we're going to do a business plan, and that's fine. That's what you should have. You ought to do a business plan. You ought to write it down. I believe that you write the vision, make it plain. That's scriptural. It's from Habakkuk, if you're a Bible scholar. But I think written business plans are very important. Written business plans are important, and I think it's important that the business owner write the plan, because the research and the data and the things that you learn writing the plan are important. What we don't do a lot is, once we've got the business started, are two things. And these are all part of planning. A, we don't go back and look at the plan versus the results. In other words, look at what we planned and look at what we did and compare the two. And when you do that, more than likely, you're going to see that you planned one thing and you did another. And if you plan one thing and did another, then what that ought to lead you to do is plan again. And that's not something that people do. It's not something that entrepreneurs do. It's something that major businesses do. They're planning all the time. And so if major corporations are spending millions of dollars and hours of time of executives in a planning process, then as an entrepreneur, you should do the same thing. And so it's not just about a startup business plan. There's a plan or a way of planning at every stage of your business development. I'm going to teach that one of these days. I'm going to go through just that chart to show you the way to plan as a startup, the way to plan as an early stage business, as a maturing business, and even as a business that might have matured and being on the verge of innovating or declining. But there are plans important at every process of business ownership, at every stage of business ownership. and planning never stops. I want to say that again. Planning never stops. Business owners have these values. Values. One value that a business owner must have is empathy. Why do you have to have empathy? Because you have to put yourself in the customer's spot, and you have to put yourself in your employee's spot, and you have to put yourself in your vendor's spot. You have to understand that succeeding in business more oftentimes is a win-win. Very rarely are you going to win in business by yourself. I don't know of businesses that can win by themselves. I only know of businesses that win in groups. They win in teams. You know, they win with employees. They win with coworkers. They win with vendors. They win with customers. And so if your customer doesn't feel like he or she is winning, they're not going to be your customer long. And so to be able to have empathy, to put yourself up and understand how other people feel is important. You have to have a sense of fairness. Fairness is important. Very few people will do business with someone that they don't like and trust. And very few people are going to like and trust someone that they don't think is fair. And so if your practices are unfair, if your prices are unfair, if your delivery is unfair, then you're not going to be in business very long. So having empathy, having a sense of fairness, developing a reputation for being honest is very important. Now, notice I said that. Developing a reputation for being honest is very important. Now, you could be honest, but if you have a dishonest reputation, it's going to hurt you. And I guess if you could be dishonest and have an honest reputation, it won't hurt you, but people generally are going to find you out. But once again, people do business with who they know, who they like, and who they trust. And so, you know, having empathy, being fair, having an honest reputation are critically important to being successful in business. I mentioned this, but you've got to be willing to work hard. I said it right off the top. You've got to be willing to get up early and stay there late. You got to be the first one to the office. And let me ask this question. So if you got a job and you beat your boss to work, then that's a good characteristic. But if you're the last one to drag in and you're often late and, you know, you're always making an excuse about why you didn't get something done, then maybe not. That willingness to work hard, to go shoulder to shoulder with your employees or other business owners or customers, those are very important characteristics. One other thing that I think is important, and it always jumps out at me when I read about successful entrepreneurs and how to be successful and some of these characteristics and traits, is understanding what your limitations are. In other words, you need to know what you don't know. None of us know everything, and none of us can do everything. And so to be successful in life and in business, what we have to do is we have to bring in people and ways to supplement what we don't know. Many business owners don't want to invest in, they don't want to invest in, say, an accountant, but they don't know accounting. So you want to save the money, but now your books are messed up. They don't want to invest in HR, but they don't know HR. And so now you got bad employee relations and you're not attractive because you're not doing the right thing with your HR department. And so it's very important that you invest in what you don't know. And most of the time, that's investing in folks either inside your business that bring a skill or an ability that you don't have, or it's investing in an outside person that can actually bring something to the business that you don't have. So anyway, I want to just say hello to some of the people that are out there in the chat. Tamika, Sherry, good evening. Lucy, good evening. Trenton, hey Trenton, how you doing? That's good. Good to see you out there. Just a few other things, and again, we're going to put some of this on the website. So you know, there are probably 30 characteristics that we could easily do. But one of the other things that is often overlooked and maybe seldom stated. You see entrepreneurs and you envision them as being great communicators. They talk well, and I mentioned they're great salesmen, and they know how to network. And boy, you know when they're in the room. But I want to remind you that communication is a two-way street. There is talking, and then there's hearing. So there's talking, but then again, there's listening. And so, as you assess your readiness for business ownership, then think about, what are my listening skills? Do I listen carefully? And I think it is a learned ability to be able to listen, without thinking ahead about what you're going to say, and to be able to listen and hear what the other person says. Now, I think that most folks who have been in, families or in relationships, and when you get into these conversations or maybe debates with your spouse, and so you're not agreeing, then, you're not listening, you're hearing, but what you're doing is you're thinking about the response to the first thing they said. So you miss the next 10 trying to respond and know what you're going to say about number one. And so that doesn't work. So if you're in business, develop this trait, develop a listening trait, develop the trait of saying, I am going to pay attention. So paying attention and listening are so important, because you can respond to the needs of an employee that can make all the difference in the world. You can respond to the needs of a vendor or customer that can make all the difference in the world. Listening and hearing are critically important. I mentioned that you're going to make mistakes. Understand that you can do that. Understand that you're building something at a business, and understand that that from time to time you're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to change. Very rarely is the line to success straight. More often it's crooked, and it goes up and down and around curves and down bends, and it's more like a river, or a highway, so it's not straight. And so you've got to be malleable. You've got to be flexible. You've got to put yourself in a position to make the changes you need to make at the time you need to make them. So those are just a few of the characteristics that that successful entrepreneurs have. I'll be back on to make more. As a matter of fact, let me just let you know that on Wednesday on the Voice America Radio Network, you can get In the Black with Bob Dickerson every Wednesday, voiceamerica.com, 6 p.m. Central Time. So that's 7 o'clock on the East Coast, and 4 o'clock if you're on the West Coast. And then I don't know. Is it 4? Yeah, 4 on the West Coast, 5 in the mountains. I have to get the time zones right. But be sure to check that out. We've been doing Facebook Live on Wednesday morning at 7 o'clock. I know that's early. We may change that time to give more people a chance now that folks are going back to work. And hopefully you're safe. Hopefully you're healthy. Hopefully this information has helped. If you want to, I would love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're here. Tell other people. Share the video. And so I want you to like it and share it. Like it and share it so we can get some other people. There's one thing I want to do, and I'll say this as I sign off. I want to help you go into and succeed in business. This is Bob Dickerson. Thanks for joining me on In the Black.